There you go, Mississippi Outdoors Radio, right here for you, as always, brought to you by the Foundation for Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. And we're awful glad you're here with us today. Adam Reed is actually out of pocket today. What did I say? Adam Reed. What am I? Adam Butler.
He wants to be like
Major
me,
Chris Reed is here.
but I'd call him my little brother.
Adam Reed. Where did I get that from?
I don't know.
Adam Butler is absent
He's
today.
absent.
He's actually on vacation doing some hunting, right?
Yeah, up in the northern part of the country. He's chasing timber noodles.
Is that what they're called?
That's what
He told
calls
me
them.
grouse.
Grouse.
I'm not sure what that is, but he's got a bird dog with him.
Well, we got Major Chris Reed here with us. You also just heard from Larry Pugh, Fisheries Bureau Director. And then y'all even brought in somebody else today, Matt Wagner with the Mississippi Museum of Natural Science, an ichthyologist.
That's a big word.
Spell that.
Studier of fish.
Studier of,
Right.
of
Fish whisperer.
small fish, right?
Itty
Yes,
bitty
sir.
fish.
Any fish you can think of in the state, I'm the one who's responsible for IDing them, basically.
Really?
Yep.
How about that? And we're going to talk with you about microfishing.
Yes, sir.
Now, that's with like a little Daiwa ultralight, right?
It's smaller than that,
It's even
JC.
smaller than that.
It's smaller than that.
As small as you can think.
I know we're going to have a good time with this with that topic. I've
Okay.
been waiting to get Matt on the show to talk about it.
Well, that sounds good. All right, let's get to work here, Major Reed. We got some more bow season openings starting tomorrow. Is that correct?
We do. October 15th, if the listeners in the South Delta remember, the commission back that season up a couple of weeks, and so that opens tomorrow in the South Delta, and then also in the southeastern part of the state, in the southeast zone, it opens there. Phil Bryant and Lake George WMA are still closed, but the other South Delta WMAs will open tomorrow, and so we're still trying to get some infrastructure work completed and some cleanup from the flood done at those other two WMAs, Phil Bryant, Lake George, and we'll try to get them open later on this year. But for tomorrow, they're still closed. So that's an exciting time for people to get back in the woods in the South Delta. A few months ago, a lot of these areas were 15, 20 foot deep in water, and so to get back and to start putting some eyes in the woods with hunters and starting to really kind of see if the deer have come back and kind of what it looks like to get some true assessments on the ground. So remember, the bag limit in those areas has been reduced this year as well, and they can always check on our website and call us if they have any questions.
Okay, and we want you to do just that. And, of course, well, don't forget about the WMA mobile check-in app. One permit station per WMA still has the cards, but really, I mean, folks, it's so easy to do it now. It's so easy to do it now because of technology. It really makes it a lot easier, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a good way. It's anything different or anything new is going to be met with some resistance or some uncomfortable feelings just because it's new. But once, people this day and age are so efficient on their phones and so attached to their hands that it won't take them that long. For instance, if you're leaving to go to a WMA and you go ahead and check in before you leave your house where you have good service and check in for the WMA you're going to, you can set a time where to actually check in. And so once you get there, you don't have to do anything. You just get your stuff on and go whenever you can. And so, yeah, it makes it easier, more efficient, and for those who don't have the smartphone, there will be paper cards at one check-in station per management area, and they could call and probably check with
It's
that
on the
WMA.
it's on the website.
The locations.
The location where those check stations are listed for each wildlife management area on our website.
And we hope that the folks will go about and do that. And then, of course, also the voluntary deer game check, something that's so important that we ask people to do.
It's always good. I've always said that our biologists, both in Fisheries Bureau and the Wildlife Bureau, are top in the nation. I think. I mean, they're so smart and good at what they do, and to give them more tools to be able to better manage this resource is going to benefit it's going to benefit the hunter, and it's going to benefit the game and our state and our resources. So it's a voluntary check system, just like the turkey check. Do it through the app. Simple. And it'll give wildlife biologists the data at a countywide level where they can make better recommendations on season, harvest, bag limit stuff. I mean, just it gives them a lot more tools to make those recommendations and manage the resource.
Yeah, I know the data that Butler got from the turkey app was pretty astounding, pretty interesting. He got a lot of good information from the folks that use the turkey app.
It takes out the speculating, because that's all we're doing right now. It's just a good
educated guess.
They call it a hypothesis in the scientific world, educated guess. Another thing I want to mention, JT, is CWD. Deer season's kicked off. We're still having people in those zones, the CWD management zones, baiting. They're still putting it out, and we're making cases on it. Our officers are out there. They're checking for this stuff. There are some rumors in the wind that we're looking to make examples out of people who violate these regulations, and that's just not the case. We're just going to enforce the law as it's written.
I was going to say, can I stop there for just a second?
Right.
When they give you that badge, you take an oath. Is that correct?
Right.
And that oath is to do what?
To uphold the law.
Exactly. And you swear on the Bible that you will do that, and therefore that's why you receive that badge. Am I correct?
That's right.
Okay, that's not making an example out of anybody. You'd give me a ticket if you had to, because if I broke the law, I would expect you to.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, and people, it doesn't matter the reasons or the thoughts or the opinions behind all that stuff. Like when we walk up and we're checking folks or we're enforcing the laws or the regulations, we don't write any of them. And whatever the purpose or the intent is behind them, we're just supposed to enforce that law. And people, whether it's driving on the highway or hunting in the woods, when the law is written, we enforce them, and they're there for the civilians to abide by them. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, then there's consequences. And so, remember that during these, we're getting a lot of calls because deer season is slowly gaining some momentum, more so now that it's actually feeling like fall out there.
Starting to cool off a little bit.
And people are asking, well, where can we feed? Or I hunt in this county and this and that. And there's the zones are listed on the website. There's no feeding at all in those zones, period. Not in a feeder, not on the ground, never been legal on the ground. But just remember that before you go out hunting, that we're out there and we're not just, we're checking to make sure people are in compliance.
Well, and again, and that's what I can't stress to people enough. Chris, it really bothers me, Major Reed, that we have people in this day and age that believe the law doesn't apply to them. The law, that they're just doing this to make an example out of somebody, or they're trying to do this or trying to do that. And it's not just with y'all; it's with all law enforcement.
Yeah, right. Everybody's becoming an expert these days.
Well, and everybody's having a hard time following rules. That's what we're having a hard time with, and that's where I think our society is going south. Is because we're having a hard time following rules. Look, it's just like I said. You write me a ticket if I caught baiting. If I had it out there, if I was in the CWD zone, it's what it is. Your officers and you and every other police officer is sworn to uphold the law. Do officers make mistakes from time to time? Sure they do.
Yeah.
Everybody's a human being, but it's not widespread. But the bottom line is this: if it's a law says, which you has nothing to do with, you don't bait, you don't feed in CWD zones, whether you're doing it in the backyard to watch the deer out the kitchen window while you're drinking coffee or you're hunting it. It doesn't matter if it's that lady that's drinking coffee to see the deer or if it's a guy that's out in the food plot that's got it out there or out in the woods. You're going to get a ticket because the law says you can't do that.
Right.
And that's the bottom line. And I just tell people, and I tell them all the time, you can do it for yourself. You can do however you want to do this, but it's up to you. You can follow the law or you can pay the fines.
Yeah, the choice is yours.
Sure. And there's anything that's selective about that. It's not certain people get to do certain things and others don't. So that's the bottom line. All right, Larry Pugh, I know why you're here. We're going to talk about fishing, and we're going to do that when we come back.
That's what I'm talking about.
Talking about fishing in the fall. And there's really a good time to be doing it, as a matter of fact. Before we get into the whole fishing part, Hal from Boyle says, I have hunting property in South Tallahatchie County. I live in Cleveland. When I kill a deer, can I transport it to my home and freeze, drop off the head at Dahomey to be tested, and I get the results back negative, and I'm free to get process the deer? If positive, what do I do then? All right, I don't know what is where and from whatever you go.
Right. So he's hunting within the CWD zone, but he's going back to Bolivar County, which is outside the CWD zone. So he can transport his deer whole. He can. No, he can't.
No, he's got
Sorry. Yeah, I'm getting confused on that long message too. So he's got to
bone
debone all the meat, do all that stuff. He can take his deer to the drop-off location, hold it, freeze it, and if it comes back positive, there's never been any links to it, but most people have just discarded the meat.
The
disposed of
CDC, the Centers for Disease
Control,
Control,
recommend eating.
They don't recommend eating. That does not come from the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, nor anybody else affiliated with that. That comes from the Centers for Disease Control. However, there has been no direct link of people eating meat that has of deer that has CWD to any kind of health effects. Now, if you're going to ask me if I were to do the same, I would discard the deer. If that
I
was
would
the case.
discard it too, me personally.
If I shoot a deer, it runs on the posted property. Can I retrieve my kill without permission? What's the rule on that?
You need to find out who owns that property and get permission before you enter the land.
Jeff said, "Sure, y'all need to make an example of people that are baiting deer in the illegal areas. Nothing wrong with that. How far does a feeder have to be from a stand now, please? It's 100 yards, right?
No, they took we took the distance requirement out a year or two ago. The only distance now is the feeder must be 100 yards from the nearest property line. And so that means that if you put a feeder 10, 15, 20 yards from your hunting location, that is good to go.
As long as you're not in a CWD zone.
Right.
That's the other part of it. All right, Larry, go ahead very quickly. What can we do for you in Tupelo?
The new check-in system, what about people who have not got the smartphones? I just left my hunting area. It took me 22 minutes to drive to the check stand, 22 minutes back, 22 minutes back to turn the card in, 22 minutes back. So that's over an hour I'm driving, and I drive by 2 or 3 stands. Why is only one area, one check stand per area?
Because they're encouraging, if I had to guess, encouraging people to use the new check-in app on your telephone. And
I've got a cheap $30 Walmart phone, a flip phone. I hadn't got the new phone.
I understand that. I'm very aware of that, but that's what they've done now, because I'm sure eventually, and this is just me guessing at it, Larry, if I had to guess, it's eventually all going to go to that at some point. So, I feel for you and the issues that you have. In my opinion, and this is just my opinion, and I've had people that have flip phones that don't want a smartphone, and I understand that too, but I've also had some people that have gotten a smartphone and they wish that they would have done it in years earlier. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with what you have, but I would suggest you look into it, because there's a lot of other really valuable things, a lot of other apps that you could put on there that would help you in tremendous amounts of different ways while you're hunting.
Like I said, it's just an undue burden on people who haven't got smartphones. I mean,
which WMA were you hunting, if you don't mind me asking?
Upper Sardis.
Okay. Well, I'll be happy to share that.
The only one that I was told was the one at Puskus Lake, and from where I cranked my truck up, it took me 22 minutes to drive there, and I got to go get the card. I got to go hunt. I got to take the card back, and then I got to drive back. That's 88 minutes of driving to turn that card in and to do it properly.
And, Larry, and they're going to notate that, and they're going to let people know
Sure.
that. And again, I do want to suggest to you, Larry. This is JT. I'm just JT here. But I really would love for you to look into it, because I'm just sitting here looking at my phone and the different apps that I have that I use. I have an MDWFP app that can give me all type of information. I have another app called Hunt Stand that lets me know exactly where I am on my property at all time. And then I have another app that helps me with wind and weather and things like that. And I know it sounds intimidating, but I promise you, if you ever look into that, Larry, and you learn some of the stuff that you could do, you'd be surprised how valuable a tool a smartphone is to you in the woods. And that's just
I understand
that's
that.
just my opinion. And I'm just I'm just giving you my opinion, and I just wish you'd look into that just for other things outside of the game check-in app or the WMA check-in app, okay?
All right, one more quick question. How much did your phone cost?
You can get a smartphone. It just depends on what depends on what carrier you use and what kind of deals they have. I don't know what carrier you use, but it's certainly you can look into them now. They're not expensive. There's different types of smartphones. You don't have to get an iPhone. You can get a Samsung. There's all different ones out there, but and they're all priced differently. Mine is a little bit different, Larry, because of what I do. I have a lot of storage and memory and RAM on my phone because I use it for my work. And it's something that you certainly wouldn't need, but you could look into it. And again, I'm just making a suggestion to you, okay? I'm not saying that's what you need to go do, but I was just saying it gives you some more opportunities just outside of that. Other apps that you can put on there make you a better hunter and make you more successful. And I'd really love for you to look in. Rhino says you can get one for $50, $30, $50, something like that. They're not that bad.
Well, if it's that cheap, yeah, but I was under the impression there's $200, $300, $500, $800.
Just look into it. Go to your provider and take a look at it. And like I said, not about the WMA app, but more about other apps that will help you be a better hunter, okay?
Okay, thank you all for taking my call.
Sure.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, and look, I'm real serious. Look into that. You'd be real surprised. Hey, an old dog learned new tricks all day long. I do it every day, Larry. I promise you. Thank you.
I will. Thank you. Like I said, thank you a lot.
I know there's people out there that don't want a smartphone. I get it.
Yeah.
I understand it. But if they would ever look in the opportunity of some of the other things, they even have fishing apps, don't they, Larry?
Sure do.
Yeah.
You know, as we knew with anything new, like
Sure.
Major Reed said, so we're trying to transition.
Sure.
And we wanted to still have those WMA permit cards available for the individual that just called in.
And, you know, my mother was the same way, and she didn't want one. She likes her smartphone. She uses it. And it's just what we're used to. It's all of us like that. All right, fall fishing. Why is it a good time to go fishing right now, Larry?
Well, obviously the weather's cooler. I got less competition out there. Those folks that fish in the fall know between football, college football, hunting season, there's a lot less competition. And I just love to go fishing anytime I can. I can always come up with a reason they didn't bite.
Mm-hmm. And it's actually easier, right?
Well, I personally think it is.
It's never easy. Not for me.
Well, if you think about what the fish are doing this time of year, they're basically following the forage. They're feeding up for the winter. Unlike the spring, where they may start having other things on their mind in the spring that may cause anglers trouble to try to catch them. This time of year, they've got one goal. They want to fatten up for the winter. And generally speaking, if you find the forage, no matter where you're fishing, you're going to be able to find whatever the predator, the fish that you're fishing for. With water temps dropping, the days are getting shorter. Fish know this, and the fish doctor here would probably agree with me. They can detect changes in length of day, certainly detect cooling water temps. So for me and a lot of anglers out there, it's just a good time to be on the water.
And it's got a lot to do with the bait fish too, right?
Sure,
Especially shad.
I tell folks follow the shad. Find a shad, you'll catch the bass, the crappie, and there's a lot of science behind what goes into that in terms of the food source for the shad, the plankton, the microscopic organisms that those shad feed on. They're going to move shallow. They're going to migrate into those creeks, those coves, and they're going to be looking for food. And obviously, as those shad and those bait fish move into those areas looking for food, the predators are not going to be far behind.
And that in turn kind of makes it easier. It kind of just confines everything, right?
Yeah, and I don't know, as someone who loves to crappie fish and someone who loves to bass fish, I tend to fish fast till I find fish. If you're fishing where bait fish are plentiful and you feel like the bass or the crappie are there, or in some cases the hybrid stripers, then I fish fast moving baits. Until I find fish, and then I slow down. So once you find active fish, so for me, it's just an easier time to fish.
So how long does this last? This fall bite?
It depends on what part of the state you're in. We're looking at water temps in the 70s right now, and you'll be surprised how quickly the water temps drop with these cool nights. And for some parts of the state, that fall bite especially in the south part of the state, may last into December, the first part of December. But typically, as the water temps start falling into the high 50s, you'll see these fall patterns that you're catching these fish on will generally hold true.
All right, Larry Pugh, let's get back to this real quick. We talk about fishing, but and when you're fishing in the fall, you still got to be safe, right?
Yeah, JT, when I talked about cooling water temps, and you're on the water, keep in mind the water temps are colder, so if you fall in, you're going to have a possibility of dealing with hypothermia. Not a possibility, you will be dealing with hypothermia. So as always, wear your personal flotation devices, your life jackets. I like to have extra rain gear with me, an extra change of clothes, and I always tell somebody where you're going and what boat ramp you're going to be putting in at. That's just good practice year round, but especially this time of year as we go into the winter. And then I'm bad to do some maintenance checks as best I can, particularly on my trailer. Check my tires, my bearings. Try to do some preventative maintenance as you can to keep things from happening, because the days are shorter, it's getting colder, and you just don't want to have any issues on the water or while you're going to or from your favorite fishing destination.
Pickwick, Enid, Ross Barnett, Oxbows, those are good places to all go, right?
I love them. That would be my picks, and especially as we get into the colder weather, we have 40 very good state lakes or state park lakes that you can visit.
Somebody asked about the giant salvini, if that was taken care of. It's just about.
We hope so.
Yeah.
We're actually in the process, or PRV's in the process of bringing the reservoir back up. Of course, it's going to depend on Mother Nature. Mm-hmm. So water levels will come up, and we'll have a very good idea once those areas in Pelahatchie Bay are covered with water again. Did we get the job done?
Okay. All right, Matt Wagner is an ichthyologist. What does that mean, Matt?
I am the guy who is basically in charge of studying all our fishes in the state. More of a research type perspective than the typical game fish management stuff.
All right.
And there's nothing. We do research as well, but more of the non-game fish research, all the threatened and endangered stuff.
What is microfishing, and how did you get started?
So it's this really unique type of fishing where some people really started to say, well, I've been catching all these game fish for years, but how can I catch the other stuff? What else is out there, and how can we get our hands on it? I mean, as an ichthyologist, we'll use our big seines and electrofishing equipment to collect all the other fish, but with over 300 species present in Mississippi, there's a lot of stuff other than our... Larry, how many game fish do we have in the state?
You put him on the spot.
You want a number?
That's probably
Well,
28 to 40.
You probably know
But
it.
it's funny. And
How about 51?
It's something like that, because all of our darters, which are about 3 to 4 inches long, are technically included in game fish in our state.
Bait.
But yeah, it's really just this unique thing where you're using really small hooks and really small stuff to try and catch these itty bitty fish that nobody really knows about.
Really?
This has blown my mind for like a week. Since I was informed we're talking about microfishing, my first question was what you just asked. What is that?
So what do you catch? What kind of fish, and what would be a trophy fish for a microfisherman?
Okay, so this goes by his individual preferences, but there's some minnows where the males in the spring get really colorful, and they get tubercles, which are these little like horns basically on their face. So catching, I guess it's the equivalent of a buck with a huge like rack to it, but it's a good sized minnow, which is like 5 or 6 inch minnow with all these cool colors like yellows, reds. A lot of times they'll have the one we have in the state, it's called a bluehead chub, and it's got a bright blue head and those like 5 or 6 little horns right on its face. So finding the big male minnow is kind of a trophy. But there's a lot of other weird ones that are just really hard to catch because they feed weirdly. So depending on what you're after out of the different 300 species you could try and go after in the state, it's to each his own, I guess.
So So I mean, do you have like this little bitty tiny fishing
Itty bitty
pole
worm or something?
that you have to get a magnifying glass to bait the hook? I mean, how does this work?
Okay, so the hooks I buy from one website online. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. I could look it up if we need to, though. But they're so small. They do have an eyelet. You actually need to get your tester, and I haven't. 2-pound test is the smallest that I can buy really easily at just wherever Bass Pro or
2-pound test line?
Yeah, it's overkill. It's really overkill.
They make 2-pound test line?
They do, and I've been told by the fly fishermen that some of the tippets they use would be even thinner and potentially easier to use, but I do have to hold it up to the sun, and I am threading it through the eye like with a clear background when I'm doing it.
I couldn't do it then.
I can barely bait a.
Yeah.
Get my
Yeah.
out up to the fish with my
Yeah.
glasses
Yeah.
now.
15 pounds hard enough for me.
Yeah, a lot of those hooks come pre-snelled though, and literally they just put super glue on the knot because some of them they don't have an eyelet. They just literally squish it flat, tie some line around it, put a dab of super glue, and that'll hold it. But
Have
literally,
you ever had a fish break your line?
I have not actually, because apparently 2-pound test can hold a 10-inch bass.
Oh,
Because sometimes when you're
that-
microfishing, you'll get a bigger fish come in.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Is this on a rod and reel?
So I use an ice fishing rod. I came down here from South Dakota, and it's really convenient because a lot of times when you're microfishing, you're hiking up into a stream or something like that, and it's not like you have a lot to carry, so you throw them on a little knapsack in your backpack. And I use night crawlers, and when I say night crawlers, I'll bring 2 with me in a Ziploc. Because you're cutting the smallest piece of night crawler you physically can and putting that on that little hook, and you're trying to find a good like pool or something where there's a lot of these minnows. So usually I'm wet wading when I'm doing
So
this.
you're tight lining.
Yeah.
We used to call that tight lining.
Yeah,
You
I'm-
just scale down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although there are some minnows that are actually on the top of the water. They're top minnows, and
Yeah.
for them, I guess you actually have to like somehow throw it out and slowly bring it in. But they'll slam it like a little largemouth. I know that sounds
a night
hilarious.
crawler.
Yeah, small.
2 of them now, just 2. That's it. And you got a whole day's worth
You
of bait.
can't help us. But we can't. I'm sorry. You just got to deal with the snide comments, okay?
No,
I
that's
told
fine.
him before we come in
prepared.
here, why don't he just go buy a can of sardines from the store?
I went to Rocky Springs. I can't remember. It's like Big Sand Creek or Little Sand Creek over there. I caught 11 species in 45 minutes.
And
Really?
that's what intrigues me, JT, as an angler that fishes for traditional sport fish. When he starts talking about the number of species that he catches, plus these people out here that want to catch, and they're called what? What do you call them? Where they develop the
Bucket
list.
listers.
Bucket list.
Life listers.
Life
Life
lister.
listers.
Life
Yeah.
lister. And that's what they're after. They want to catch as many species
All
as they
300
can.
of them in the state.
Yeah.
So do you use a little piece of worm, or is that the only thing you use?
Generally, I just use worm. There's some other guys that use some little like mysis feeder shrimp that you would feed your aquarium fish and stuff like that. There's some guys that will use actual like tied flies, but they're just really targeting a small fish. There's one guy in particular. He literally wears his wetsuit and he will snorkel to catch some of the fishes that live on the bottom of the river, specifically darters. And he has a little like 1.5 foot long rod, and he is literally sitting there underwater while snorkeling, jigging in front of the fish until it hits the lure. So yeah.
So he takes a photo and releases it.
Yep. Well, some of these guys though, they keep them in their home aquariums.
Oh, yeah.
So like, there's some of the guys they go straight from okay, I caught it, now I get to take it home with me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a weird little niche.
So is this popular?
I know about 15 to 20 guys that do it, and I mean it's not taken off everywhere. It's really popular overseas apparently. I think in Japan is where this really got started, but they're trying to do catch and release, and the hooks are barbless. I mean, making a barb at a hook that tiny would be almost impossible. But they have a lot of different things over there. They use little boxes you can put the fish in, made of plexiglass, so you can photograph them when you're done and release them alive. But yeah, so I doubt there's more than maybe 100 guys nationwide doing it, but more people are getting intrigued by it and they're having fun with it. So
JT, I had a guy at a conference maybe 2 years ago tell me he was coming to Mississippi to catch 3 species we had on his life list.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously he was serious about it. I laughed at first, but there's a group of people out there that's their passion, and I'm glad the fact that he came down to Mississippi to catch something that he didn't have.
Where do you normally go? Where's like the number one place to go in Mississippi?
I've been on Bayou Pierre a few times. I like the Strong River because it's not that far from Jackson.
Right.
It's got pretty good diversity. You can go right there in that park. And those are my 2 main spots that I like to go. And usually I like a clear creek so you can actually see what you're going after, because you're not just throwing randomly into a giant dark pool because you don't know what you're going to end up with. You're sight fishing a lot of times for these fish. It's all those little minnows, and they'll literally bite your leg hairs off while you're fishing for them, which is kind of funny because I'm sitting there fishing in sandals. But yeah, so local
Sounds
creeks.
like a piranha.
Sounds like that pedicure you get over there in Japan, where the fish eat the stuff off your feet.
Yeah.
So if
I've heard
I,
about it. I have never partaken.
If I Googled microfishing, is that going to help me
get
get started, or someone else like
yeah.
Major Reed?
There's a
I
couple
need
of
all the help I can get.
There's a couple of websites dedicated to it, and there's also one called Rough Fish, where a lot of the guys that go after all the other species also kind of get into the microfishing. But it's kind of just a weird thing that you gotta know somebody or read up online.
I think it'd be neat for somebody looking to get. I mean, everybody this day and age seems to be like they want to do something different, something outside the mold. I don't want to do what everybody else. Everybody wants to be different. You can look at, I don't know, you can look at all kind of stuff and tell folks want to be different nowadays. But this would be a really good way to get into the outdoors. It doesn't. You don't have to get a boat. You don't have to get. It's a fairly inexpensive investment. And you're definitely being different out there.
And here's where we preview this week's Mississippi Outdoors Television, which airs Thursday nights at 7:30 on MPB, re-airs on Saturday night at 5:30. And you can follow Mississippi Outdoors TV on their website, Facebook, and YouTube channel. All right, Reed, what's happening?
Quail hunting.
Quail hunting.
Quail hunting at the Trout Valley Quail Preserve in Tallahatchie County. And then the second segment, the crew will be back on the Mississippi Gulf Coast to highlight the oyster industry from catch to consumption.
Yeah.
That should be pretty interesting because a lot of people may not have an idea of what they know what the oysters look like when they're brought to them on a platter.
I know what they look like when they've been charbroiled and a piece of French bread with them.
They look right, huh?
Yes, sir.
I know when they were talking about it, going down to start filming that. It was interesting. I think it'd be good to see.
And it'd probably be interesting to people just coming off this summer when we had so much of the algae stuff going on down there, and people were a little skeptical to be eating the oysters, maybe advised not to.
Well, unfortunately, and when nobody's made any bones about it, outdoors TV is a year out. That's basically what it is. I mean, it's the only way y'all can turn them around. And it's showing you the way it was. The oyster industry on the coast has been destroyed with the opening of the Bonnie Carey Spillway. That's what did it. And the sad part about it was they had worked so hard to get it back. And we're not going to get into all the politics and all that stuff, but they're fighting right now to try to hopefully make this stop right now. But it's really sad because they had come so far. And this will highlight, I think it's really good that you can now go and see what it was. And this is going to show you what it was a year ago, and, of course, not what it is now. And it's just unfortunate. But a lot of people don't realize how they do it. They literally it's like farm raising oysters is what they do. Is how the oyster industry works. What do they call the little thing that they put in there that starts it? Don't you know? Wouldn't you know? Maybe.
No.
I forget what they call it. It's like the little oyster embryo or whatever it's called that they seed them with. I forget what the name of that
I
is.
Say it started with an R. I can't remember.
Yeah, something like that.
Kitty like our freshwater mussels.
But that's the way it starts, and it starts from there, and they seed them, and then it goes and they grow. And
you're a well-knowledged host, JT.
Well, Reed, I've been sitting in this chair for 22 years, going on 22 years.
Happy anniversary.
I've learned a little thing or two here from time to time. Not expert in none, and just a little bit of knowledge.
Relifer?
Something like that.
I think that's
when
what
you get done watching the Mississippi Outdoors show this Thursday, what are you going to do this weekend?
This weekend I will probably be in Starkville, considering we'll have a high school game there Friday and a regular game there on Saturday. So I'll spend a lot of time in Oktibbeha County.
Yeah,
as a matter of fact.
Well, good for you.
I did mention to Major Reed earlier, JT. I had an interesting conversation yesterday at church about our shooting ranges. We had some folks that went over and shot at McIver, and speaking of fall fishing, speaking of hunting season, this is a great time of the year to be visiting our shooting ranges. And McIver's state of the art, brand new. You got Turcotte, you got McHenry. So we really got them in north, central, and south. And if you're interested in shooting, my oldest daughter has started getting interested in shooting.
Really?
Then it's a great place to go and visit and do some shoot some sporting clays.
Get honed in before the waterfowl season kicks off.
Yeah, impressive facilities.
Or rabbits.
Check those deer rifles out too. They got a rifle range at them as well.
It's something I don't usually think about. I mean, and yesterday I got several questions about it. I was like, man, this is a good time of the year to go to the shooting range.
There'd be a lot of people there too, because a lot of people are doing exactly what we're talking about, sighting in their rifles and stuff.
Getting ready, preparing. It's that time of year.
Mm-hmm. And you can do that. And, of course, as you said, there's 3 of them now. What's the newest one? Is that the one up north?
McIver? Yeah, up north.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, of course, Turcotte's a wonderful facility as well. that's been there, and you can go and do that. This is the one I know of because I've been there. I haven't been to the other two. So
One in South Mississippi, McHenry's, just Perkinston, just between Wiggins, south of Wiggins maybe, and north of Gulfport. It's in a good
before
location.
you get to the bypass, because I
Yep.
passed it last week.
Yeah, you can see the brown sign on 49.
I passed it before I
I've
got-
shot there. It's really not. It's a really great facility.
So take advantage of that, and of course those opportunities are there for you as well. Well, interesting to be here what kind of tales Adam Butler's got when he comes back next week with his grouse hunting.
Timber doodles, man.
Whatever
That's what he calls them.
timber doodles.
Timber doodler. He's a timber doodler.
Well, they've been gone a week, so
He may
oughta
not
have
come
some,
back.
You ought to have some good tales.
All right, folks. Remember, pay attention if you're in the CWD enforcement zones. There is no feeding. Period. Whether you're hunting over it or whether you're looking out the kitchen window drinking coffee, you cannot feed in those zones. It's on the website mdwfp.com, and please make sure that you are aware of that, because ignorance of the law is no excuse, and we don't want to see you have to get a citation. Okay. All right, Major Reed, thank you for being here. Everybody, I appreciate you. Matt, thank you. Larry Pugh, thank you as well.
Yep.
We'll continue. We got the Gallo Rewind coming up. We'll see you guys next Monday for more Mississippi Outdoors Radio right here on Super Talk Mississippi.